episode 293 of the Global from Asia podcast. This is a fun one, trying to lighten things up with the whole crazy coronavirus, talking about the old days in China, some of the adventures and stories of a friend of mine with his new book and Wild East Stories.
Welcome to the Global from Asia podcast, where the daunting process of running an international business is broken down into straight-up, actionable advice. And now, your host, Michael Michelini.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Just had a call with a friend of mine in China, Chinese seller, Wilson Blues. May as well put him out there, and he's just stuck at home. Just saying like all of China's like basically just sitting at home, and I'm recording this right before Valentine's Day on February 13th, 2020, and we're just not sure. Cameron Walker we had last week, we put him up ahead of the schedule because we're just thinking, hey, this coronavirus might go away and we don't want to talk about it in an interview when this stuff's over, but it still seems to be going. And I was asking Wilson about the factories, and he says they're not really allowed to be open still, and things are still kind of sitting and waiting. So, and then my wife, chatting to her a little bit, daily WeChats. Honestly, I have to be honest, I was looking at my flights. I was checking flights, sending her screenshots on WeChat of some flight options, and I think, she's like, just stay where you're at. I mean, doing some stuff with Alpha Rock. Actually, we're rebranding Virtuous Graphics into Prime Label Studios, a new studio center. If you watch my vlog, you might see some of the images. Probably have to get an interview with that story. That's been intense, really intense. Been really, really intense here last month, working with Alpha Rock and relaunching the photo video studio for the Amazon sellers. But it's just been an intense, really intense. I don't know. Never been really so challenged. My wife says they don't go to, her dad used to go to market to get food. Now they're just ordering everything online. They say they got about a week's worth of food at home. Just doing video calls. My wife and kids and aunts and grandparents all jammed into a two bedroom apartments. But anyway, I'll keep you guys updated each week of that. This week's show is a fun one. Try to lighten up the whole situation here. But basically, Devin, really good friend of mine, we worked together and he did some amazing things. He speaks Cantonese Mandarin really well. He's so well versed in different parts of China and Hong Kong, and he's back in the U.S. right now, and he was writing a book, and I'm hoping to help him out here. I've backed his book online in a crowdsourcing platform. Forget the name there, but we'll link it up, of course, on the show notes. And he takes some of the parts of the book he's working on, and we had some fun just talking about good old times and this crazy adventures in China before this virus. And hopefully the virus goes away, and hopefully these stories will keep happening, because right now I think most people are not enjoying these wild stories. So you can get a little preview of some of that, and he's also gives you some insights about his road trips and things he saw as Jewish people in China. And I hope you appreciate and enjoy this. Thanks, Devin, for sharing, and let's tune in. Are you looking for something to do in November? Cross-Border Summit, 5th Annual. We're bringing it down to Chiang Mai, Thailand, November 19th and 20th. Actually, we're stacking even more value. We got a pre-event mastermind for those that want to upgrade to a VIP ticket. And we're going to add some workshops after on the Saturday, November 21st, 2020. So it could be up to 4 days. And we're even adding some tours of some markets and some factories in the surrounding areas. We got some local Thai people on our team now helping us out. If this all sounds really interesting, crossbordersummit.com/Thailand. Still haven't opened tickets as of recording, but save the dates. If you are a GFA VIP member, you will get first access and, of course, special discounted prices. So thanks again for listening to the show, and I hope to see you at the event. Okay, thank you everybody for tuning in to our Global from Asia podcast. Actually, Devin has been on my list of guests to get on the show for, I don't know, since the beginning maybe. But finally getting it happen, almost 300 shows, but we have Devin on the show. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. Yeah, we've been talking about this for ages, and it's great. We finally got it.
Yeah, yeah. So I can't remember when we first, how long ago. It was 2010, 11, 12, something like that. And our common friend Jamin's house. And then we connected there. And then we spent some more time at a startup weekend in Chengdu. I remember,
Yeah,
I remember that.
yeah. That was kind of cool because we met. It was definitely a Thanksgiving dinner party because Matt and Jamin used to throw those awesome
Yeah.
American expat Shenzhen dinner parties, and I think it was either you or maybe it was Johnny G or maybe it was John Gallagher, if you remember. He was around town for a while, and somehow we all kind of managed to connect there.
Great.
And then in Chengdu, you were there for startup weekend, and then I was there on business.
Okay.
And somehow we'd gotten introduced, and we were at the Bookworm. Remember
Yeah.
the Chengdu Bookworm?
Yeah, I remember you had been there. I mean, I think it was my first time to Chengdu, so
Yeah.
you were showing me around a bit. It was fun, and even then, especially now, you have so many stories, which is always the fun part of Asia or China, especially, which we'll talk about today. But it seems like I'm excited about your campaign you're working on, your book, Wild East Story. Is that correct?
Yeah, I just labeled it New Wild West, but we'll jump into it in a minute.
Okay.
It's the same thing like what you're talking about. It's always fun to be able to just you know sort of post that period in your life. As I guess it's kind of the same for a lot of us who lived in China a long time,
Yeah.
and we're kind of like past that real almost wild phase of the way that China was, and the way that how it's kind of shifted with the technology changing. And now it's fun to get to the chance to reminisce and go back. You meet people who kind of came to China after doing their MBA degree for a year in 2015, and you just go, man, it was so different before you came
Yeah.
sometimes.
I mean, especially now, I remember we had talked about it even a few years ago. You said you were in Shanghai, and they're all
Yeah.
like corporate guys, foreigners now, with like talking English everywhere, basically like not even feeling like the China experience.
Yeah, the French Quarter, you may as well be in somewhere in Southern California and half the areas. I mean, it's funny. It reminds me the two most similar places I found were if you're in Hong Kong in Wan Chai, but on the old Wan Chai side, so like Queens Road East, back by Pacific Place 3,
Oh
all the
yeah, in the
French
back
investment
there.
banks are there. So
Yeah.
if you come out at like 10 or 11 o'clock by Pacific Place 3 Tower in the morning, you usually see like a bunch of French bankers all sitting there like having their espressos and smoking their cigarettes and
Yeah.
talking with each other and hearing French spoken all day. And then that's a lot of parts of the French Quarter in Shanghai these days. It's the same. You'll kind of come down and people who are working will be outside, and you may as well be in some part of the U.S. or some part of France for at least for that little snippet in the direction you're
Yeah.
looking.
Yeah, but you're quite the opposite. I mean, you're I'd say fluent. You'll probably be more modest, but you speak really good Mandarin and Cantonese. I've seen it myself many times. And I think you said you spent a year in Shenyang, where my wife's hometown. So we also were reconnecting on that before the interview. But
Yeah, I
yeah, I
gotta I
mean,
gotta thank you for sharing your story going up to Shenyang on the podcast, because I hadn't thought about Shenyang in ages. It'd been so long since I went back there. It was one of the first places I lived in China for more than a year. I studied abroad there at Liaoning University,
yeah,
and really that was my first kind of deep dive into mainland China, living there. And so it was cool when you were talking about it, showing some videos. I started thinking back. I was like, wow, I was like, you're really in the heartland now when you get up to cities like Shenyang.
definitely.
It's not Shenzhen.
Yeah, I mean, some people are saying I should stick around because my Chinese, you have to basically, there's no English there, right? There's no French Quarter or Shanghai bar area anywhere
You,
there.
you know, it's so funny. There's a district in Shenyang called Shita, and in there used to be like a north, a south, and east, and a west Ta, like a little pagoda around the old city capital. Shita, the western pagoda, has become this ethnic Korea town.
Oh, yeah, I think
because
I've seen Korean
all of
too.
that northern part of China, the northeastern part, it's probably the most one of the most multi-ethnic, multicultural parts of China, although it's not always obviously on its face like that. And ethnic Koreans make up a huge portion of the population. And yeah, we were always there. It's one of the late night spots. You go get your Korean barbecue, you go get your soju, and you go to karaoke and
Yeah,
stuff. Like that's where the university students would go hang out back when we were when we were there. So
great. Yeah, I mean,
yeah, it
I
just becomes a
remember.
fun spot.
Yeah, it's definitely true. We didn't say yeah, but Dongbei, which is east, north, or northeast of China, the chicken head, right? It's the head of the chicken. I always
Yep,
think of the China
the
countries.
brain of the chicken.
The brain, I don't know about that one. That's going too far, maybe, but the northeast. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I mean, I think today there's so many stories, and I just like maybe you put some on your blog. We'll link that up. We'll link to your campaign and everything you're doing. But where's the new Wild West? I guess that's why I don't know about you, but that's why I came. The calling of opportunity, the calling of new chances. I guess maybe like my ancestors came from Europe to America. Is that what you mean with the new Wild West kind of idea, or?
A little bit. I mean, there was definitely an element of that, and through the 90s and through the early 2000s, when guys like us, we talk like we're old timers a little bit, but really there was the whole generation, two generations of China hands before us that were even older old timers who saw other parts of the transition. But I think at our time we still kind of caught that last wave of this transition where you know it was China was never the Wild West in the sense of it was lawless. There was always laws, there was always
Mm,
rules. But then as China transitioned its economy, things had to change. And the way they changed, and the way they got implemented, just created this vacuum of experiences sometimes where people came, at least for me, I met people that came for all different reasons. About the only type of person I ever really met in China was the stereotypical kind of Asia-file person. Like
oh,
the person who would study Japanese and be into anime and then just kind of like
oh,
end up in China.
oh.
Most of the maybe in Beijing or Shanghai there were some more of them, but in places like Shenyang, it was more like, oh, I'm working as the regional factory output manager, and I need to go live here for 2 years to inspect our JV partner, or oh, I'm here doing my research on some esoteric part of Chinese history of this one period, and this is where I need to be. And so it was always kind of a eclectic mix of people compared to for college age individuals like ourselves when we first came out there. you know your friends, your classmates were, if they liked Asia, it was Japanese, it was maybe Korean a couple of years later, and you were kind of the oddball as for thinking China as a destination. So I liked that. There was this element of a Wild West because of this vacuum created in the context of overlapping and changing regulatory and economic systems. There was also that weird sort of laissez-faire, lots of people from lots of different places coming in to try and do something in the context of that. And I just, yeah, as I left China and Hong Kong and moved back here to LA, I was just thinking about it, and I was just going, I'm sure lots of people have lots of stories about their time living there. The two of us are hardly the only Americans or
Hmm.
foreign people in general who moved to China and live. But that being said, we both have had lots of experiences and observed a lot firsthand what
Yeah,
it's like. And if we were a high school kid now from the U.S. who went on like an exchange program to China for a summer, what they will see is completely different than what we would have seen, than what somebody else before us would have seen.
true,
And
true.
so, that snippet of time as things change, it reminded me kind of the real Wild West, that snippet of time where people live like the Wild West. There was a before and an after, and it was the real Wild West in America was more of a transitionary phase as well. And
Okay,
that's what really got that, came to mind when I was thinking about it.
okay, great. Yeah, I mean, it's totally true. We also were just joking a little bit, but it's about the French Quarter of Shanghai or Wanchai, Hong Kong. But even back then, there was differences of what part of China or Asia you ended up. And I have to admit, I was the ignorant American before I came. I even said it yesterday in the Philippines event. I said I kind of mixed up Philippines and China when I was American in the US. Like I didn't know like, all these differences, but especially in China, like talking about Shenyang, Shanghai, Hong Kong, those are
Mhm.
all far apart and totally like kind of different experiences, even at the same time, even in the same years that we were there, there were different
No,
perspectives.
for sure. Like it's. I think for me, definitely the grounding in education about sort of Asia for most Americans really in that high school level really just wasn't there. You had your world history class once and a lot of things happened all around the world and that was that. Okay, back to back to your regular subject. So what context do you have to understand the region? I
Mm.
had a little bit of an advantage because I grew up in Hawaii. So, if you say the Philippines specifically, in Hawaii, we know where the Philippines is. I mean, that's
Okay,
they're
so
kind of sister,
yeah, I
sister
understand.
territories,
Yeah.
and in a lot of sense, historically as well as culturally, and there's a lot of crossover in that. But then, that same comment doesn't hold true for Xi'an or
Hmm.
Lanzhou or Taiyuan or somewhere like that. That may as well be throwing a dart at a dartboard blindfolded to
It's
see. So
true. It's true.
it was that same process as you showed up and you just started to learn. And back then, China's internet had, by the time I was there, China had the internet and it was still way more open than it was now. You could get your Google and your Facebook and everything,
Yeah, back then it worked.
which which is weird to think about, but even then there wasn't that great of information everywhere. You didn't really have YouTube yet back then and stuff. And
I think
so
they blocked YouTube. When I was there, there was YouTube was blocked, but
yeah,
Google worked and Facebook worked for a while I was still there. But Facebook, I
YouTube
guess, got
hadn't quite
really
rolled
mad at
out when I
YouTube
was
because they
first
made
there. Yeah.
videos. Like, I guess there was a lot of videos they didn't like. So,
Well,
uh,
that happened. I mean, yeah, no, it was yeah, it was weird. Like just back in those days, the way that you met people was by first connecting through kind of local expat communities, or maybe through your work or through your school, getting to meet a couple of classmates, and it was just an interesting way. You kind of had to organically feel your way through it back
mm-hmm.
then, and
Yeah,
yeah,
I'm the same. Like, I've said it too. Like, I got my information about China business like at bars with expats and like crazy chain smoking Chinese businessmen. Like, and I had to balance the two because the Chinese businessman was saying, you don't need to do that. That's a waste of money. You don't need to pay the tax. You don't need to file this paper. And then, but the expat businessman I met at the in Macaulay's, in the Irish pub, he's like, you got to take this serious. You can get deported. You got to file everything correctly. You got to have
yep.
a company. You got to hire people legally. And I got a Chinese guy like, that doesn't matter, man. Just pay him cash and don't have a company here. And it's like, I was trying to like balance these two extremes. That's how I learned China business.
My first introduction to some of the ways that this worked, it was at school, right? And so we were exchange students at the Outdoor, like I was saying, and we were the first group of exchange students from America at Liaoning University. They
Okay.
had some foreign exchange students, so they'd had some German students. They had a lot of Russian students coming down, as I'm sure you've seen in the Northeast. There's a
Yeah.
lot of
Yeah.
Russian
A lot of
influence, and in the
Russians there.
50s, a lot of the people who were in school in the 50s, back when China and Russia, when Mao and Stalin were still kind of close together before they split, they all learned Russian instead of
Okay.
English because that's where they
Okay.
were. So there were foreigners, but they for Americans we were kind of the first group that had ever come to the university on an exchange, and so the systems in the school didn't match up, right? So right away our curriculum that our Chinese teacher in Oregon had put together for us to go study, very very painstakingly laid out and careful.
Yeah.
Liaoning University was his alma mater, so that's how he bridged the connection for us to be there. And we showed up at the transcript registration office, the administrative office where you go get yourself registered for courses and all that stuff. And they didn't have a functioning computer. Everything was done on typewriters and little like almost like receipt type paper, like wax paper where you fold it apart and you keep a copy. And we showed up and they looked, they're like, oh yeah, we don't have anything registered. We don't know what we're going to do. And my friend and I, who came with me, he said, what? So are we supposed to? They go, oh yeah, you got to pay your fees, and if you pay your fees, then you can take your course. So eventually, after like 3 or 4 days of discussing, of having one of our professor's friends from the U.S. talk to somebody else, they eventually came back and they were like, oh, okay, we've got it sorted now. Here you go, and they handed us our actual transcripts to us at the beginning of the semester, and we went, we didn't do class yet, and they went, oh no, it's no problem, it's through there, and we went. So we just take this then and we go to class. Like, yeah, don't worry. It's all okay. With your help, your professor helped us. So basically, we got a whole free semester.
Wow, there you go.
I mean, it worked. I speak Chinese, so I got what I needed out of it. But that whole sort of like disorganized front of the way things happened. That was it. We got off the plane and we thought, okay, well, we're 2 students. There's a program. There's the things. We used to have the foreign student dormitory. They used to bicycle chain the doors shut at night against fire code violations, right? But they said it was to protect the foreign students. They didn't want anybody coming in or out. But all we had to do, we figured out pretty quick, was to buy a pack of like Marlboros, one of those big long things.
Yeah,
and then when the little guard in front who had the bike lock, he wouldn't register us. All we do is give him a pack of Marlboros, and so he could get his free pack of cigarettes each night, and then it was like an open door for everybody. That. Like all those type of things were just like the ways that we got around stuff and how it worked. And yeah, that grounding when you first land in the country and go, it would have been different if you were at like Beijing University or something like Fudan University down in Shanghai or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it was probably like that in like the late 80s or the early 90s.
Yeah.
But then because those are very well-known universities and very seeking of international recognition, they put a lot of their systems in place earlier. But when you went to Shenyang, even in the early 2000s, that just wasn't a destination. People, it was you were in a backwater. You were in a place that wasn't the attractive spot for foreigners to go to, which again, I think it benefited studying the language. I don't think it did you any benefit to go network with a bunch of rich kids at Beijing University who want to study their English.
Yeah.
Might have, politically, maybe business-wise, sure, maybe you build a couple of relationships that would last you through time. That I'm not saying that, but to learn the language, most of my classmates in Shenyang, none of them were the Korean classmates, for example, they failed their English tests. That's why they ended up studying Chinese and coming from Korea to Shenyang.
Yeah.
So for them, they the only way for the ethnic Koreans could talk to the Koreans in Korean, obviously, but the only way they could talk to anyone else was to learn Chinese. So even amongst our classmates, we had to speak Chinese to each other just to do our homework, just to communicate, to make friends. Which for the first like 3 months, we had this weird patois. It was almost like something out of like old Macau, where everybody's speaking a different language and sort of hammering that into some kind of patois that everyone understands. Yeah. But eventually, proper Chinese started to take over, and that I think that really, in the end, did contribute a lot to being more comfortable speaking and working in it, because what choice did you have, right?
I'm sure. I know. I mean, yeah, if everybody around you can only speak Chinese. I mean, I spent some time in Dongguan with some factories, and that's also when my Chinese accelerated because I had nobody to speak English with. So I had to do that to get food and to like not get in trouble at a nightclub when I like danced with the girl that was some mafia guy's like girlfriend or wife and wanted, that's when I started figuring out my Chinese. So,
Oh, Dongguan. I don't think the world's going to see another place like Dongguan again. I don't know.
Yeah,
maybe somewhere in Nigeria or something now. I don't know. But like that city.
Did
anybody ever drag you to the Prince Hotel? The Wangzi Fandian in Dongguan?
I don't think so.
It was this gigantic like 6-story monstrosity full of like just labyrinth of karaoke rooms and saunas and that other thing. Oh man, it was that whole place was great.
All right, let's go to the next topic.
Yeah.
The Jews of Kaifeng. This is one of your blogs, the descendants of local Chinese Jews. I don't know if you want to share that.
So when I when I was studying in Shenyang, I got a grant. I can't remember what it was. It was something like, it wasn't a Rhodes Scholar grant, but it was an equivalent type of like a study program where you get a grant to do some special research, and you put a project together and you go deliver it back in like a series of seminars and stuff. So sorry, it's been a long time. I don't remember what it was, but that was the idea. And so for me, I'm part Jewish, my background, from my family side, and so I was just doing some research, and I learned that there are and have been ethnic Jews in China since the Song Dynasty or before. I mean, some of them followed the Silk Road into China, and they intermarried. They look like Hui Muslims. You know, their facial features are all Chinese by now, but you know, at a family cultural background, they still follow kind of their own lineage. And I'd heard about that in the, you know, I just told you about the weird transcript registration system. Well, one of my good friends was Australian, and they were at the end of their high school term. So, you know, in their summer period, they came to China for a year as their gap year, and they got to spend a year in China. Well, this is a really great friend of mine. He's actually going to contribute some stories to the book too. The two of us we're back in touch now. So he's got his notes on this stuff also. So we're gonna hopefully be able to get some of these stories back.
Great.
In the summer, we decided we were going to travel. And as for me to do part of my project, which revolved around trying to understand and research these ethnic Jews living in China, we said, well, why don't we make our way to the city of Kaifeng, where they were supposed to be, and we'll do it. So we decided we would leave for 2.5, well, it was almost 3 months in the end. We just left. We didn't so much ask permission. We just told our teachers, yeah, we're going to go. And we did. We met up in Dalian. He went a few days before. He was dating a Russian girl living down in Dalian, and you know that Russian quarter in Dalian.
Yeah. I spent some time there.
Yeah, and he went a few days before, and then I caught up with him in Dalian, and we started. And we, for like 2.5, almost 3 months, we basically just backpacked our way from the northern part of China all the way slowly through different provinces until we finally had Hainan. Right. And one of the main stops was in Kaifeng. And so when we got to Kaifeng, we got our goal. We said, we're going to go find these Chinese Jews, and we're going to learn whatever we can about them. Now, if you go online and you research, especially with the state of Israel, you know, sort of over the last few years trying to breach closer economic relations with China and that thing, there's been a lot more academic research and also sort of religious organizational approach to help bring some of these ethnic Jews to Israel to learn more about their heritage. So there is some of that stuff now, but this was back, you know, in the early 2000s. There were a couple of scholarly articles written, some journals had published about it, but really this was a very small kind of esoteric bit of Chinese studies. And yeah, we found him. If you read the story, it was pretty wild. We didn't expect to do it. We had no idea what we were doing. You know, armed with, you know, university student levels of Chinese, you know, just sort of bouncing around. And
that's crazy.
Henan province, as you well know, Henan is kind of the butt of a lot of jokes of Chinese people. That
yeah.
You know, if you picture the Northeast is sometimes characterized a little bit like the deep south of China, or sometimes a little bit like kind of the Midwest, like Detroit, like hard scrabble, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
The Alabama, the deep hills, the backwater, that's kind of Henan, and it's so back then it was even more so than it is. It was even less open than it is now. So yeah, just, you know, two kind of crazy college age, you know, Laowai running around Henan trying to find Jewish people. It was an experience.
I can imagine that. But so I mean, I'm just thinking how far Dalian to Hainan. So you were doing that train, car?
No, so what we did is we basically did a lot of the overnight sleeper buses.
Oh.
Remember back in the day, they used to
Yeah,
have
those
those sleeper coach
two-story.
buses.
Yeah, with the
Yeah, and you'd hit a pothole and you're laying down, and all of a sudden you hit the ceiling. You'd be bouncing. And yeah, so what we would do is we would go to a city, right? And we'd get there in the morning from the night before. We'd explore, we'd learn about it. Sometimes we didn't know where we were going a lot of the time, right? We had a general direction. We'd look at a map and we'd go like this. What's your next ticket anywhere kind of within this? And then, usually the ticket seller lady would be kind of laughing her ass off after seeing two foreigners speak like that. And then she'd be like, well, what about there? And we go, okay. and so we'd get the night ticket. And then so each day we'd finish off, and then the evening we'd try to sleep on the sleeper bus, and then show up at the next city the next day, right? So occasionally it didn't work. Occasionally we had to get a little like a dormitory style sleeper room, or every once in a while we got a hotel room when we couldn't find it. Some of the little towns didn't allow foreigners to stay in hotels back.
Wow.
They still are kind of like that, but back then some of them really didn't.
Yeah,
so,
they don't want to register with the police.
yeah,
Stuff like that.
It was sketchy as hell in a lot of little backwater towns in China back then. So, every once in a while we'd have to get a hotel when we couldn't find anywhere else. But for the most part, we were able to just kind of leapfrog every night and see a new place.
Nice.
And it was, yeah, I mean, talk about a way to really see a country.
I'm sure that's an amazing way. I mean,
Yeah.
Way better than those highways, the super highways. I mean, those are expensive too. I don't know if they existed then, but you can drive, those boring, really worse than American highways, like just nothing. You don't see anything and just pay tolls. I've been in those.
I mean, you know the feeling now, right? Like back in the day in the Pearl River Delta, going between factory towns, you'd be switching cars, you'd be putting on fake license plates to get through the toll booths and doing all that great stuff.
Yeah,
and
there's no speed
nowadays
limit.
you just get on you get on one highway, you do the whole Pearl River Delta in a day and be done.
Yeah. And they're connecting even more now. More trains and highways, but for sure. Wow.
Yeah. Well, that what's that? It's that they call it the Qingwei, that light rail that connects Guangzhou South to Gongbei portal outside of Macau in Zhuhai.
Okay.
So now you literally can take a train, because it used to be the high speed train from Hong Kong connected to Guangzhou first, and that was one of the first cross border train connections in China, because even Shenzhen at the time that was built was still a lot smaller than it is now. And so you could always get on that fast train from Hong Kong, in 2.5 hours, get to Guangzhou and do your business there. But the southern side of the Pearl River Delta, there was nothing, right? There was only one bridge. There was the Humen Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
And God help you if you got stuck on the afternoon traffic getting across the Humen Bridge. That was a couple hours sitting there, because the whole Pearl River Delta had to cross that bridge at like 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and that was it. And before that, the southern side, there was nothing. I mean, I remember once getting to Macau from Guangzhou. I was at work in Guangzhou. We finished around like 5 or 6 on a Friday, and a buddy of mine had his band playing in Macau, and it was at like 9 or 10. And so I left from Panyu, just outside of Guangzhou, and I literally was like motorcycle and the old black licensed taxis, the old unlicensed taxis. I was hopping village road to village road. I think I went through like 10 different taxi cars after like 4 or 5 hours, I finally ended up in Zhuhai. Yeah, and I was able to cross the border and go see part of the concert. Like it was insane. Just like driving up to the one border, switching cars, the guys negotiating, right? Because you paid your fee, so you're not going to pay any extra. So then they're negotiating, trying to get the best price, and you're just like each border hopping until you can finally get down there. It was that's the way you had to organize things.
It was like a time warp too. I've done similar, like Dongguan. I was between Dongguan a lot and Hong Kong for a year or two, and you just feel like you're going through this time lapse. You're like in this dirty factory. There was one time I was doing the e-commerce fulfillment project, and I had a client from UK, and he was this like fashion guy, and he came to visit us in Dongguan at the e-commerce center, and he's like, "Hey, Mike, you want to go to this fashion party with me in Lane Crawford and El Chi Fung?" I'm like, "All right." I'm like, "But I'm in like I'm like in dirty." At the time, I had like a hoodie and jeans. He's like, no problem. So we just went, we drove to the factory van, then dropped you here, then a taxi, and then we had to cross the border, then we had to take a subway, and then I'm in this like posh, high-end fashion networking party.
Oh,
and,
there's my light. Give me a second. Hold on.
It's okay. So basically, yeah, I was like totally. And then they thought I was like some Mark Zuckerberg. I don't know if you can still hear me, but they thought I was like Mark Zuckerberg because I had like a gray hoodie on and jeans at this fashion party.
Totally. I mean, that those are the type of things, and you got that all across the country, pretty much everywhere. Everything functioned like that for so long.
Yeah.
Until not quite overnight, but it kind of felt like overnight. It didn't, and the highways got connected. First, credit card payments became a thing, and everybody got credit cards. Because I remember for a long time, you wouldn't dare, even a domestic Chinese credit card, if you had one, you wouldn't dare spend it in any shop.
I
know. You were guaranteed to lose whatever money was or credit was attached to that account.
I know.
And then slowly it became a real thing, and then almost just as quickly as it became a real thing, WeChat got launched.
Yep.
QQ was a big thing way before WeChat, and that didn't have payments and stuff. And then so quickly it went from this kind of just not disorganized, but almost, again, I always viewed it as just disparate systems. There's all these legacy ways of doing things that will get piled on top of each other, and then all of a sudden in a stroke, it's like, okay, that's gone. Now everything's going to be ordered and do it this way. And you scratch your head sometimes. You go, well, it changed so fast that it'd be sad if we really lost something about how the old way, and how it used to work.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, I miss the old times. I think it's kind of going to the next point. We're getting towards the end. There's so much to talk about. But
we could do this for hours.
I know we could go on forever. But I mean, we also, I'm sure. I'm looking forward to reading your book with your campaign. We'll
definitely.
But maybe what do you see? So yeah, it's all these rapid changes, and it kind of got rid of a lot of the old expats, I feel, and the new expats coming. I guess it was multiple generations, but what do you see the next? I guess I don't know if you want to pick Asia or China specifically, but what do you see in the future? I don't know, 5, 10, 50 years. I mean, maybe give us some insights. What do you see happening? Is it going to keep going like what we're seeing?
Let me think about how to answer it, because I feel you're like me. We both have had more than just business relations in China. We've had friends, we've had family. Things. There's an element to China, I think that you enjoy and that you love and you respect more than that goes much deeper than just pure, okay, this is business, let's go make money. And it's a false, it's an easy thing because China can be very mercantile, it can be very transactional. A lot of Chinese people themselves in their relationships can be very kind of transactional when you compare that to the way that Americans or Europeans might talk about things. It's not, though. That's a little bit of a disingenuous way to put it. On the surface, it can seem like that at times, coming from our perspectives, but it's not. And I think that elements of family and who are people, I don't think that ever is going to change. And I think for people that love China, you love it. You don't love it for all the political and economic changes and all the discussion. There's something deeper about why you love it. And that revolves around people and the people you've met and the people you build your relationships around. And I don't think regardless of what happens, that'll ever end up changing. That being said, the context in which people live and how they live their lives has changed dramatically. And for me, China is it's a very uncertain place right now, longer term. And there are elements of the way that China has been changing that I like to see. I like to see the fact that laws are, theoretically getting more clearly enforced and more regularly enforced. I mean, again, why do so many Chinese try to send their kids overseas to study? I mean, you can argue propaganda-wise that no, that's not the case, and our universities are going up and all that stuff. But there's more Chinese students than ever before in the U.S. right now. So, LA's LA's pretty much Chinese speaking in some of the districts now compared to when I was younger. So it's you can make arguments, but at the same time, there are reasons why those trends happen. And I don't know. I try to be an optimistic person, but at the same time, we were talking about with coronavirus a little bit earlier before we got started. Just you see some of those same patterns of the way the system is
up
to handle things.
Yeah.
And so what's going to happen there? I don't know with China specifically. What I think it means for the rest of Asia, I think China's economic and political power rise drove the rest of Asia to get its act together. And it did that in a few ways. I think in some ways, in some countries like Japan, and to a lesser extent in places like South Korea or Taiwan or some other areas, places that were more economically developed, I think they looked at a mix of like benefit and threat that was caused by China's rise, and it forced them to kind of change. Japan benefited greatly. I mean, in the 90s, from Hawaii, we would visit Japan and see things. And in the 90s, that was the doldrums of the Japanese economy. Like when I was a kid in Hawaii, we had the whole economy collapse. I mean, in the Big Island, we got wiped out when the Japanese financial crisis hit. Like, whole hotels were derelict for 10 years, sitting along the coastline along Lee Drive. Like, so we saw that, right? It was you saw it in a lot of places. Australia saw it. In Hawaii, we saw the Japanese financial crisis. Like it hit hard. And when Chinese started spending money in Japan again, naturally the economy started to pick up, and people then, as the economy picked up, younger people are always going to invest and be entrepreneurs and make their own businesses too, and things start to change. And I think China drove a lot of good change like that. I think China also played statecraft, and you see that more in Southeast Asia. You see that in the Philippines a lot, with kind of the Chinese class of wealthy Filipinos kind of latching on to China as a source and a business partner, and sometimes to the benefit of other classes of Filipinos, sometimes to the detriment. Same things going on in Cambodia, down in Thailand. You see this great China entering the great game, trying to shift its power by using money and resources to lasso these economies in. And again, on one hand, you've got amazing changes in wealth across all of Asia, and on the other hand, you've got the rise of conflicts like the South China Sea, and how do we define international law in this new rising state? And so I think as China's economy and its system starts to see some pretty intense conflict derive around it, I think a lot of these regional Asia economies are also going to kind of solidify and move. And as foreigners, as investors, as entrepreneurs, as people like ourselves, I think, sort of not being stuck in the ways that we would do things before become really valuable. Look at yourself. You spend a lot more time in the Philippines now. There's things going on there. There's stuff happening.
Yeah, all over Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia. There was a ton. Vietnam. There's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah.
Will that last 10 years? Like is it the beginning of a wave now that got its first starting power from sort of Chinese money, or is it Chinese money starts to shrink back, and then 10 years later, money in Southeast Asia starts to shrink back? We don't know.
Yeah.
Right? You never really know. You can read about it, you can understand it, but ultimately, if you're somebody who is not being an academic, if you're somebody who's making an investment and putting years of your life, really even more than money, doing the next 10 years of your life in an area trying to figure it out, those are the type of gambles and choices you got to make. Right, and you follow those big trends, and then you look at the little opportunities that are created, and you kind of move in. So, I'm not sure. I think in the big broad context, I think the center of wealth from the East Coast to the West Coast of the U.S. has already begun its shift, and that'll continue shifting. And I think we'll see kind of the old European bits of wealth will kind of stay clustered around where they are. And I think in the U.S. that there's really going to be that political wealth gravity shift towards the West Coast, and business from the West Coast and from the Western seaboard to Asia will be a big driver of where the world's wealth kind of aligns itself over the next 50 to 100 years. So that big kind of Atlantic towards Pacific shift, I think, is definitely happening. It's underway. And regionally, what does that mean? Because the U.S. and Canada are Pacific powers too. So I think there's going to be way more micro opportunities coming into place between North America and distinct markets in Asia. So, like Taiwan to LA, Ho Chi Minh to Seattle,
Interesting.
Bangkok to San Francisco, like these kind of. No, but I mean, look, you do digital nomad stuff, man. Like Chiang Mai to Bangkok,
it doesn't
it's
matter.
not crazy. Like you 15 years ago, you might not have thought about it, but now I don't think you can ignore it if you really want to find that next kind of latent opportunity to get into. So for me, I'm using the time back in LA as a chance to kind of reflect on these things and really align and look and say, well, where are some of the new things? I think guys like you, guys like me, we've had the fortune, the good fortune, to be able to spend our lives in a different place and understand both what that means to spend our lives in Asia, to understand a bit about the differences regionally in Asia and the different cultural contexts that can come in, but also we've had a chance to break out of our own kind of single way of viewing something from North America and experience that on the ground somewhere else. And we could do it again. If we did it once, we could do it again. So if that next spot pops up in East Africa over the next 10 years, again, it's one more time back on the horse. It's the same ride, but we've lived through that once. And then now if we can leverage that old experience and take that into something new, I think, it's an adventure, and that's what you look forward to doing.
Yeah, I agree, man. This is exciting. And I mean, there's lots to talk about. I want to make sure we spend some time talking about your campaign, this book. What's the story here?
So like I was saying, I started this project to get some of these stories written down and collected, mainly so that I could share. I mean, my viewpoint is not definitive. There's many, many viewpoints, and a lot of people have had more experiences than me. But I did have my experiences, and I saw them and learned from them the way I did. And I figured, what, it's high time I use this opportunity to put them together. And at the same time, I said, well, what's an interesting way that I can keep myself engaged to do it? Because as you also know, you've published a bunch of books yourself, which are really great, by the way. I loved the Gladiator.
Thanks, buddy.
What was the title again?
E-commerce Gladiator.
E-commerce Gladiator. It was fantastic, man. That was really well done. And but how challenging it can be when you're doing other stuff to get yourself motivated to actually really get in there. And so that's where my GoFundMe came forward. I was like, well, one, I hadn't really done a crowdsourcing campaign myself before. So I was like, well, let me learn how to do it. I said, two, I have this project. I really want to get it done. I want to put it out there to share with people. How do I get myself motivated, and how do I set goals for myself and make myself do it? And this was a great way to approach that. And then three, how do I, if I can get people excited, if I can find out who likes it, who wants to support me, if there's something they can share or something to go on, I'm not asking for a lot of donations. I'm just asking for, if people like it and this is something there, if you contribute back in. Also, people who've got stories, I want to invite them to kind of come in and share them as well, and just see what I can build around that whole sort of community aspect of putting a campaign together, and seeing what I can drive. And that's what I did.
Exciting, man. So, all right. And then we'll link it up on the show notes. Is there other websites, or other? share about?
I've put together a little Wix page. To be
Okay.
honest, I bought a domain.
Yeah, we gotta help you out.
I'm
I
pretty
saw
sure
it,
it was
man.
New
You gotta
Wild.
put it to the domain.
I think it was wildwestasia.com, but I haven't even connected it yet.
Yeah, I
So
can help
why
you.
don't we just use the GoFundMe page for now,
Okay.
and then I'll
Yeah.
just keep people informed as I do this. And yeah, thanks for inviting me on the show. I
Awesome,
love it.
man.
I do follow all your vlogs and
Oh,
and
wow.
where you go.
Thanks so
It's
much.
fun. I can't wait till we can get back together again.
I know it's been a
Probably,
while now. I look forward
yeah,
to it.
it's been a
Well,
couple of months, so probably a few more months. We'll see.
yeah, well,
I'm going to be in Honolulu at East Meets West at the conference.
oh,
Actually, I'm on a
exciting.
panel with Casey.
Oh, our friend Casey.
Yeah,
Great.
Casey and I are going to be on a panel together end of the month, so late next week, talking about some similar topics like
Oh,
changes
okay.
in Asia, and because you saw what happened with Rise and everything this year, and
Yeah,
all of
they
that. So we're sharing our stories with the fallout of economics in Hong Kong and all these issues. So it's
I
gonna
know.
gonna be exciting. If you haven't heard of it, East Meets West, 2020, the Hawaii's Venture Conference. So yeah, we'll have some fun.
Yeah, I'm taking some notes to make sure we link it for people to find. But thanks so much, Devin, again.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Mike.
Enjoy all these guests and all this stuff happening and want to even get more. GFAVIP.com is our private community. Been working actually since 2016. We've had a little bit of a membership, but in the new year in 2020, we've upgraded a forum, we've upgraded the calls, we're doing different styles, and so far people have been really enjoying it. So if you like what we're doing, you want to get to know us a little bit more, we have private forum with private groups. Even we have these little mini mastermind groups where it's just a few people inside. We do some calls, we have courses, we have private little meetup events happening. If this sounds cool to you, check it out. It's a paid service and it supports the show. GFAVIP.com. Thank you for considering it. Thanks, Devin. Really cool to have that little capture of history from you, and I wish you all the best with your book. Of course, if you're listening and you enjoyed that or you enjoy this, you want to support, I don't know if I put $25 or $50. I did that also with some other guests to have their crowdfunding on there. Every dollar counts. I always want to see these books and these projects get made to life. Check it out on the website. We do have a website. Some of you, like Peter, I was talking to, a listener and friend of mine and supporter what we do here with our events and everything, and previous guest Peter Chong, and he was saying he didn't even know we had a website or doesn't check the website, just listens to our iTunes show or his whatever podcast feed he's listening to. But we have a huge website, globalfromasia.com, and we spend quite a bit of time making these show notes and links of what we can on that. So it might show up also in your podcast reader, but we try to link to different things. So if you enjoy this, to episode 293, there's a link to the show notes there. And I am mentally and physically exhausted, if you have to know. And Valentine's Day, well, Chinese people don't follow it, but my Valentine's Day will just be chilling in my one-bedroom apartment in Manila, Philippines. Maybe do a video call with a wife and kids and wave to them again. But I hope Valentine's will be over when this show goes online, but I hope you enjoyed that with your loved one or loved ones or other caring people around you. But the plan for me, I'm on the fence still, but still sitting tight here in Manila, working hard, making deals, making businesses. And wife is, stronger than me, honestly. She's like, don't worry, we're okay. Do what you gotta do. But that's why she's amazing. And I am going to try to get some rest, but I have been honestly waking up naturally at 3:30 a.m. every day. Like, I just open my eyes and it's like 3:30 or 4 a.m. It's kind of weird. Anyway, sometimes I go back to sleep, sometimes I actually stay up. This Thursday, I woke up at 4 a.m. and I just got out of bed and started working. There's so much work for content. I mean, I'm doing content for Global Asia, Mike's blog, a little bit of Alpha Rock stuff, newsletters, and other content there, webinars, private, it's just so much stuff. We got a private forum at gfavip.com, built out a huge site there, content. It's truly a content machine here. And I do that usually in my mornings, get up at 5:30 a.m. normally with the alarm, but now it's been 4 a.m., 4:30, 3:30 once in a while. Getting old maybe. But I'm waking up and just still going to sleep at the same time. I don't know, 7 hours of sleep. Anyway, thank you for listening. Episode 293 over and out. And we got amazing guests lined up coming out. Already a few great ones. And I'm really excited to share. And if you guys appreciate it, you can consider our membership, consider our events. Just send a little thank you message to us or share this with your friends. Get the word out about Global from Asia. Thanks again. Talk to you later.
To get more info about running an international business, please visit our website at www.globalfromasia.com. That's www.globalfromasia.com. Also, be sure to subscribe to our iTunes feed. Thanks for tuning in.